Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Red Sofa Conversations. So, this is an exciting project that I've been working on because I believe that conversation is truly important in life. It is the gateway to connecting with people. And I'm very happy to have as my guest on the Red Sofa my friend Whitney. So, Whitney is a women's empowerment coach and founder of Flame, which she'll tell you what that is. And Whitney and I met a year ago, last November, in fact. And the thing about conversation is that when you have conversations that kind of matter, you find connection between you and that other person. And that's certainly something that we found right away when we first met.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
And we've just carried on conversing since.
Exactly, yes.
So, Whitney, tell me a little bit about Flame, first of all.
So, Flame is a women's empowerment network. It stands for Females Living a Meaningful Existence. And it was really formed, really kind of from my heart space, to just empower women around confidence and finding their self-worth, and really to have us all reach our full potential through supporting each other and finding our meaningful existence, whatever it means to us. So I'm really excited to be here talking today and continuing our conversation.
Yeah, and today's topic is actually about the power of language and why language really matters. So let's kick off then. Why do words matter so much?
Oh, it is, I think it's such a loaded topic, you know. But I think fundamentally words matter so much because there is such a strong body-mind connection with everything that we say and that we do and that we feel on both a physical and an emotional level.
Yeah.
So when we're constantly putting each other down and putting ourselves down, you can't help to have a massive impact on your psyche and on your behavior externally, internally, everything. And I think it's one of those things that isn't always, it's not always looked at right away as something that we really need to focus on, yet I don't think anything is more important.
I 100% agree. And actually, so let's break it down a little bit. So obviously there's words that we say to other people and how we talk to other people, and maybe we'll come on to that a little bit later. But I think something that's even more critically important, which probably also impacts how we talk to other people, is how we talk to ourselves. So our self-talk. Now, would you believe that I did not even know about the concept of self-talk until 6 years ago? So I'd basically gone through pretty much up to my, coming up to the end of my 30s, completely oblivious to the fact that there were things that I was saying to myself, not consciously, and not even like out loud or anything, but it was making me feel a certain way. So, and when I learned about self-talk, so I learned about it at a More to Life weekend, and they had a little puppet, and they talked about, mind talk, they called it. So mind talk, self-talk, monkey mind, there are various different phrases, which, cover the same thing. And it just blew my mind because I suddenly realized, when I get that feeling, that awful, uncomfortable feeling in my chest or my stomach, or I can't put my finger on it, but I don't feel good, that's as a result of I've told myself something really, not very kind. And, and it's so insidious because I think that our self-talk starts from when we're a child. And when we're a child, we don't have, we're learning as we're going along, but I don't think that we sort of understand how any situation or any event can kind of plant itself in our minds, and then just become part of us. And so you can be like, if for example, you're not great at a sport. So I was never the most sporty kid. In fact, the only medal I ever got was the beanbag and hoop relay race. But apart from that, I wasn't great at netball. I wasn't great at rounders or anything.
And me both.
So in my mind, I was kind of like, I'm just not good at that. And that's really limiting, because when you define yourself as, I'm not good at that, I'm not good at sport, you just carry that with you. So, I thought of myself as I don't like to do that. So it was a real shift for me about 7 years ago when I joined a gym and I got a personal trainer, and I worked with him 3 times a week, and I worked with him for quite a long time. It was so interesting because I had so defined myself by, I don't do that and that isn't something that I do. But little by little, as I started to try and started to kind of achieve things when I was at the gym, it expanded. So I didn't really know that I was telling myself these things in the first place, and that it was having such a sort of a limiting effect.
Yeah, that's really interesting. 2 things you said. I think the fact that we come up with our self-talk at such a young age. And even though I think schools have gotten better than maybe when you and I were younger, but probably. I think even when you and I were younger, there's always this focus on, it's wrong to be mean. You should always be nice to people. They teach you good manners. They teach you, how you should talk to people. But they never teach you how you should talk to yourself. And when you think about, when you become conscious, like you did, around the things that you were saying to yourself, it's really crazy to think, I would never say that to someone else. Some of the stuff, it's like, I would not even say that to my worst enemy.
It's true.
And so with self-talk like that, who needs enemies?
Because you are your worst enemy in that moment.
Absolutely.
And you don't even know.
No, not at all. And it's kind of sad when you become aware of it. And I don't think it's unusual at all that you said, it was only in the last 5 years that you realized this. Because I think we don't most of the time until someone raises our consciousness to it. I don't think we do understand that there is a voice, and that there is, kind of our higher truth. And that was when you were talking about, you felt that.
You feel it in your body, yeah.
Yeah, like I really believe that's kind of our inner truth. And that's something that we know, this isn't right. Yet I've got this overlying powerful voice that is saying, you're not good enough, you're not good at that, or you're not smart, or whatever it is. Like, we all have that talk. There's this really interesting quote. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time. I love Eckhart Tolle. I read a lot of his stuff. And he talks so much about the ego and the higher self, and it's 2 parts of us. And there's a quote he says is that the voice in your head is not, I'm going to mess this up, but it's you are not the voice in your head, but the one who hears it. That's the quote. And I think that's so powerful, because when you think about it, if you can hear a voice in your head, if you can recognize that there is this negative self-talk, then how can that be you? It's because you're recognizing it.
So what that quote is actually doing is it's making you do 2 things. Firstly, it's making you become aware that there is a voice in your head. So noticing and awareness is the first step for anything, right?
Yeah.
To actually see what's there.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that something's there, rather than just being unconscious and then just feeling like crap. And then when you notice what's there, the fact that you have the ability to step back and notice, then also means that you are 2 separate people. And when you're that, you then have parts. Separate parts.
Yeah.
And then you have the power to change and reframe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I just
the higher part of you versus your ego.
Yeah.
And when I say ego, a lot of people think ego, that just means, ego is conceit. Ego, I think a lot of people have
being
a very
egotistical.
Small, exactly, a very small version of ego.
Okay.
But ego.
What's the larger version?
The larger version of ego is, it is really the part that is driven by society. It's driven by rules that people have given us. It's driven by our need for acceptance and our need for love and all of that. And it's the superficial part of us versus the true part of us.
So I always make a distinction between the ego, what my ego wants, and what my heart wants.
Exactly.
And the heart, I feel it's coming from a more pure place.
Yes.
And I feel it like obviously here, but with the ego, it's more mental. It's more like this should be like that, and this should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's such a good way to say it. It's like the heart and the head.
Yeah. And just to touch on something that you said about schools. So this year, I had the opportunity to volunteer at a primary school just down the road, and it was an absolutely glorious school, and I was so happy to see in classrooms they had so many concepts about, they had fixed mindset thinking, growth mindset thinking. I love that too, because when you sort of say, I'm not good at maths, well, I am having difficulties with that right now, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah.
And that's something that actually I've learned from Matthew Hussey too, where it's more about the journey and the process than the result.
Absolutely.
Because, we sort of, results are measured at such a young age. You need to get grades, or you need, let's go for straight A's, or let's go for, being picked for this team or that team, or whatever it is. And if you do music exams, getting distinction or whatever, right? Like, we're always taught you should be doing your best and whatever. So everybody's focused on the result.
Yeah. And
actually, when you speak to children, I read a really helpful article where, it blew my mind, because it talked about things that one should try and avoid saying with children. And it had a whole list. And I remember sending this to my friends about 4 years ago. And when I scanned the list, I was dead shocked, because there were things, I think that I'm, quite careful about how I, talk to my nieces, and I encourage them about certain things. But for example, when a child is drawing a picture, when you see a child, drawing or painting or whatever, what's generally one of the first things you say?
Usually you'll ask, what is that?
Oh, actually, you're really involved. No, so in the article, it sort of said that people mainly go, "Oh, that's so pretty. That's so lovely. That's such a beautiful picture," right?
Yeah.
But actually, and so what you're doing then is you're making the result, the beauty. Oh, it's a pretty picture, and therefore it's good. Whereas what you said, oh, what is that? Tell me about that. Oh, I like the choices you made there, or I like that shape, or that. And you get the child to explain what they were thinking about when they drew it. That's very different to, oh, the result is that it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Because beauty, first of all, is individual, and there's no consistent standard. And what you're doing by actually asking them about their process is you're encouraging their imagination and their creativity, and the fact that they're trying. Oh, I really love that you take time to do that. I suppose it's also, it's like when with children, I remember years ago, 20 years ago actually, meeting a family in Seattle, and I'd gone to a friend of a friend's place, and there was a party, and there was a couple, and they had 3 children, and the children were just beautiful. They were such beautiful children, and everyone was like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. As you do with children, and the parents were like, thank you, but we actually prefer to not go on about it, because we don't want that to be the thing that is in their heads.
Right.
And that stayed with me, that was 20 years ago. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so interesting that they are so conscious in the language that they use and they want their children to be around. And that seeped into my head. And so one of the things, I have 2 nieces in Florida, and one of the things that I'm always very conscious about is I encourage their character traits. So when one of them looks out for, her younger sister, or, she tries to protect her or she tries to help her, I always sort of encourage them and I say, I really loved it when you were so kind and you looked out for that. Or I recorded a video for the younger one's 8th birthday. And I talked about her character, because I got to spend, they were with me for the month of July. And so I got to really spend, significant time with them and really understand what they were about. And she's an incredibly kind and, caring little girl. She's singing me lullabies to help me sleep and everything. And I talked to her. I said, I see how you are, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I love the fact that you're so caring to people, rather than just you're so pretty.
Yes, yeah. I love that. And I read an article very similar to what you're kind of describing, especially with young girls these days. And instead of, like you said, focusing on how pretty they are, or how, cute they look, to focus on character traits or how strong they are, and how, powerful they can be when they give a compliment, or, things like that, instead of just looks and superficial things. And I think it's so true, and I love that, because, we are so much more than that superficial part. And I think when they can start to hear that at a young age and know that those are the qualities that are admirable, but also, this is the language that they're hearing. So it's not just like, oh, I'm pretty. And then they start reading, as they grow up, they start reading these magazines that completely always make them feel like they're not enough.
I mean, what about Instagram and filters?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the physical part is just, it can be so destructive. So, I love the fact that we get more to the heart of what's true. Yeah. And that's that internal beauty. And again, it all comes back to language.
I can't remember who said this, and maybe you'll know, but somebody said about, your job as a parent is to fill your child's bucket so high that so that their self-esteem is in a really good place. I've completely messed up this quote, but to strengthen their self-esteem, so that then when they leave and go out into the world, maybe at uni or whatever, they have those reserves. And I think that there is a difference between girls and boys in this regard.
Yeah.
Like, strengthening girls' self-esteem is incredibly important from a young age. Yeah. Quite possibly because, if you look at it even with children's clothes, so boys, it's all powerful and, you're adventurous. And there was a TED Talk by the woman that founded Girls That Code, and she said that it's so critically important to teach girls bravery and not perfection. Did you ever watch that?
Oh, I love that.
Did you see the talk?
No.
Oh, this is so this is about girls. So she's founded this company, Girls Who Code. And they did an experiment, or this is what they observed. So when they had girls and boys in a classroom, and you have something on the computer called keystrokes, where you can see all of the keystrokes. So after about half an hour, when they were figuring, when they were kind of letting them kind of do what they needed to do, boys would have, pages sort of filled or whatever, and some of it would be wrong. And girls would have nothing. And so you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, wow, they haven't actually done anything in this half an hour, whatever the period is. But actually, then when you do the keystroke assessment, you see that they have started, then it's not quite right, so they've erased it, then they've started, then they've erased it, because they want things to be perfect. I'm so guilty of this. I am a recovering perfectionist. It's something I have to work on every day in everything that I do. Small things and big things. And the other thing is that they said that a professor said when there's something wrong, like when he has office hours, so boys come in and they say, oh, professor, there's something wrong with this code, right? And this is what I've done, and it's not kind of working out so well, and I think it's a problem here. But it's the code that's wrong. And do you know what girls say when they go see the professor?
There's something wrong with them.
There's something wrong with me. I can't figure it out. I mean, look at the language. Look at the language patterning there.
And that's crazy if it's happening that early, because I mean it's
well. This is even university level. This is up to university level.
Well, and it's also consistent. You know, they always say the same thing, like with job interviews, that women, if they see, you know, if there's 10 qualities that you have, they'll only apply if they have at least 9.
At least 9, right?
And men will do it after 2 to 3.
Oh, I heard it was qualities. 6, but you know, much less.
Much less.
Much less.
And it's, you know, it's really, really interesting. I mean, it happens at such a young age, and I think, you know, as parents have so much to think about when they're raising children. You know, like your first primary thing is to keep them safe and to make sure that you're doing everything you need. It's a huge responsibility being a parent, and it's probably the hardest job I think there is out there, right? Yeah.
Because it's not a thing. It's your flesh and blood and somebody that you love more than life itself. So I completely get it. But what this lady was saying in the TED Talk is that she said, you know, from such an early age, you know, boys are taught you climb trees and they're adventurous and they try. It's all about trying and then course correcting. Whereas with girls, it's just not as much. It's about encouraging the trying, encouraging and celebrating the, hey, it doesn't matter if it doesn't go well. What matters is that you actually tried and put effort. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, you know, we talk about how important it is for children, but I mean, it's equally important for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Even at this age, you know, like, and I think throughout our life.
Yeah.
To be aware.
Absolutely. And, you know, something that you just kind of made me think of on the whole trying and, you know, boys versus girls is sometimes I feel like women can be our own worst enemies with each other. And True. The perfectionism thing sometimes is driven by each other with the judgments and the criticism, and it goes back to that language and the things that we say to each other, and it sometimes really makes me sick when I see online trolling.
Yeah, I mean, social media
of women cutting other women down on social media. And, you know, that's very tangible because you can see it, you can read it. But it's an age-old problem. And I do think that, you know, perfectionism is such a big can of worms.
Yeah.
But I think the language and the language that we use with each other and the criticisms and judgment play a lot, or maybe a lot, but a part of the role in that perfectionism, because it's not only do we not think we're enough, but we have this fear of being judged and rejected and criticized through language that also drives that perfectionism.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? It's almost like flip sides of a coin, because on one hand, in certain circumstances, we can be so unkind to ourselves, but if it was our friend telling us the same event or the same story, we would be so kind. And I mean, I've had conversations with my best friend where I've been beating myself up about something, and she's then said, okay, Lara, imagine that this is me telling you all of this. She's like, just right now, imagine. So in the middle of a conversation, she tells me to do that, and there's something kind of weird about it, because something in my brain kicks in and I spill over with all the love and the support, the unconditional love, the support, the encouragement, the kindness. And then she's like, exactly, you know, and you've proved my point. And I'm just going, where did that come from? If I can automatically do that for her, and yet it doesn't come as easily. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely better at it since I started 6 years ago, and I think even especially this year, I'm very, very aware. I mean, I change my language in the middle of conversation. So if I say something that's like, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm not good enough, or I'm, you know, I'm a procrastinator or whatever. Well, yes, I procrastinate sometimes, but I'm not a procrastinator. You know, it's even like minute just language, shifting. Just shifting. And you know what's really been hugely significant for me this year, actually in the last 2 months. So I'm doing this online course, online speaking course, which I thought was just going to be a speaking course, and I was going to learn tools. And lo and behold, it was actually pretty transformational. And I learnt an exercise, which is a mirror exercise, which I didn't really believe in before. I never believed in mirror work. It felt very, what's the word? Disingenuous. You know, I didn't really feel like I was being authentic sitting in front of the mirror and going, I love and accept you as you are, because I was kind of like, oh, well, I know that's not true.
It can be uncomfortable at first.
Yeah. But this involved saying 3 things. So 3 sentences. So you look in the mirror and you say your name, and then you say, I'm proud of you for. And you say that 7 times, so 7 different things. And then you say, I forgive you for 7 things, and I commit to you that, and 7 things. And I'm telling you, Whitney, doing this exercise has literally changed my life. I don't even know exactly what it is about this exercise that has had such a profound impact, but I mean, if we break it down, I'm proud of you, that's recognition and gratitude, right? It's like, it's appreciation and looking at your positive qualities.
And how often do you do that?
Yeah, because our minds are the default of our minds and our brains, they're wired to look at the negative first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it starts with celebrating and making you appreciate qualities about yourself. So that's great. I actually found that quite easy, because over the last 6 years, I've worked towards that. So I was kind of good at that. But when it was I forgive you, I wept. I wept for like 3-4 minutes the first time I did it, before I could even get out anything that I forgave myself for. And the really shocking thing for me was that the things that I was saying I forgive you for they were just mind-blowing. You know, it was sort of things that weren't really my fault, and were just things that if it had been somebody else, I would have been so accepting and so kind. And, you know, it showed me, gosh, that negative voice, like it's so, like I didn't even know, you know, health stuff, or, you know, I'm not, you know, really svelte, or, you know, I haven't got my life figured out, or, you know, big things where it's like, well, I'm in my life and I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to learn things and, you know, be the best version of me, and it's a process. But, you know, I kind of went for the result.
So when you did this exercise, was this the first time when you really looked at the forgiveness? Yeah. Was that really the first time that you realized how unkind you were being to yourself?
Oh, I've known it. I've known it for ages. Like, I'm aware, right? I'm aware because, you know, I think that, and I do agree with Brene Brown, like when you get through all of the layers of what we say about ourselves, it ends up coming down to, you know, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, right? Like when Oprah says this too.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew that that's something that, you know, I need to strengthen and I need to work on, which is what I've been doing, you know, the last 6 years, consciously and unconsciously. But it was definitely the first time that I uttered those words. I forgive you. And there's something very powerful when you're doing that for yourself. Because what I found, you know, and I've been doing the mirror work consistently, you know, I may miss a day here or there, but I get back on track pretty quickly.
So this is an everyday thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And, you know, ideally it'd be great to do it at the beginning of the day, but sometimes when I don't, I might do it just before bed. Like, I just do it. Sometimes, you know, I'll do it sitting in front of the mirror, or sometimes if I'm rushing to go somewhere, I'll do it on the tube, looking at my camera phone.
Why not?
Yeah, just to make sure I kind of
you.
do it. Yeah, exactly. Because I think sometimes, you know, with life, you have to make things work.
Yeah, exactly. Being kind to yourself.
Yes, and adapt and flexible.
Giving yourself a break.
Yeah, see, this is my working on my perfectionism. That, before it would be like, if I'm not doing it at this particular point in the day in front of the mirror, I'm not doing it perfectly, and therefore I won't do it at all. Whereas sometimes done is better than perfect.
Exactly. Oh, I love that quote. Yeah.
Who said that?
I don't know who originally said it. I mean, it's kind of out with everyone now, but I mean, it's so true. And it's one thing that I have in my planner. Yeah. I need to be reminded a lot.
Oh my God, me too.
It's such a good one.
There's that one, and then there's the other one. Is it perfection is the enemy of the good?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, that's another good one, right?
I know. There's a lot. I'm sure there's a ton,
the mantras of perfectionists.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what are some of the things like that you have become aware in terms of your own self-talk? And how have you kind of tried to break that down and replace it with more helpful language?
Yeah, for some reason, I have always been maybe more aware at a younger age. So I think I've told you before, but growing up, my mother, she was my first hero, and she still is. And she's the most beautiful person, inside and out. And I mean, from the time I can remember, I was, I'd always say, Mom, you're beautiful, or, just complimenting her. Mm-hmm. And she would never be able to take the compliment. And, she'd always say something kind of negative back, like, oh, no, I'm, or she'd make like a funny face, or she always had such negative self-talk. And I remember feeling, how you were saying at the beginning when we started talking, how you felt this almost physical feeling, like this isn't right.
Yeah.
And I remember always feeling like that, and almost being upset that she couldn't take that compliment, and knew, oddly enough, at a very young age, that there was something not right there. However, as I got older, I started taking on her characteristics in the same way. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that we are all taught to do. Not even...
I think you absorb it. But you absorb it, like osmosis or something.
Exactly.
Because it's all the messages, it's things you see, it's things you see on TV, things you see in your family.
Yeah, like friends, society tells women, you're being selfish if you're being kind to yourself, or you give yourself a break, or if you put yourself first to take care of yourself.
Because generally we are caregivers.
Yeah.
Right? We are the ones that look out for other people. And so when you're looking out for other people, you don't necessarily... It feels selfish to look out for yourself. But, what do they tell you in on planes? You need to put on your own your own safety mask. What's the word?
Yeah,
totally blanked.
Put the oxygen
mask
before you can help others.
Before you can help others.
And it's so true, and that's actually a really big thing at Flame that we talk about a lot. Is you have to put fuel in the ambulance before you can help the people. And anyway, to get back to your question, I continue to kind of take on these characteristics because it wasn't just my mom; it was all of the the people in my life, especially women. And I had a mentor when I was in university who, and it was actually a guy who, I was having dinner with him and kind of feeling sorry for myself, putting myself down, saying I can't do these things. And he just said, I don't believe you. Because if you really wanted to do these things, you would do them. And you would find a way. And you would start by having faith in yourself. And that starts with what you're telling yourself. And it starts with your stories. And then he went in to tell me the story about when he was like 20 years old. He had a baby on the way. he did not have a job. He didn't know how he was going to afford diapers with his wife. And he said, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had enough faith in myself to do it. And I told myself every day the story that I wanted to hear, that I wanted to have.
He gave himself the positive voice and the validation and the reassurance and the acceptance that we so often seek externally.
Yeah.
But he gave that to himself.
Yeah. You know, he made up the story that he wanted
That's
to happen.
so beautiful.
And that was, I think, really when... That was such an empowering... I will never forget that conversation because it was so empowering in so many ways. Because it made me realize that I have a lot more control than I think. And it starts with my language. And so that was a very, very transformational moment for me. And when I'm, at crossroads in my life since then, I always go back to that and think, okay, what story, what bit do I need to change here? What do I want the outcome to be? Instead of focusing, am I focusing on something that I don't want to happen? Am I talking negatively to myself? Am I on that hamster wheel? Because we all get on that hamster wheel, as you know.
Completely.
And sometimes we get so caught up we don't even realize.
Yeah. 100%.
It's, it's constant. I don't think, unless you're, I don't know anyone, actually, I should say, that has mastered the art of self-talk, positive all the time. It's always going to be a work in progress.
It's a practice. I think that's something that we probably need to accept, that, as we go through life, we have to practice things.
Yeah.
And the more that we practice them, well, first of all, accept that the fact that we have to practice them doesn't mean we're a failure. It means we're human. Mm-hmm. I think having a baseline level of acceptance about who we are, and the fact that we then have to practice them just means that we're going to get better. We're going to get better at whatever we practice. And therefore, when we get better at it, it's going to come easier. We're going to recognize things quicker. And maybe we'll get to a point where 7 times out of 10, we won't say the negative thing first. We'll say the kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what I'm going to do next. Well, that's a fact, but it can also make you feel like crap. So it could be better to say, I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, I love the word yet.
Yeah.
Because when you just add the word yet to a sentence, what you're doing is you're opening up the pathway to hope and possibility. And it just... I do consciously use yet now.
Yeah.
So, before, if I was like, I'm not this, it's like, well, or I can't do this yet. I'm not a good speaker. I'm not a good speaker yet.
Yes.
I'm not a mother. I'm not a mother yet.
And how amazing is it that one little word can completely change, and give hope.
Even just saying it, right? Like I said it, and your face lit up because if that's just what we can do by like one word, imagine if we can, consciously say whole sentences.
Yeah.
That's an exercise I'm actually doing at the moment. So Lisa Nichols, who it's her course that I'm doing.
Lisa
Oh,
Nichols.
do you? Well, this is the
amazing.
course. This is the course that I'm doing. But I watched, as part of the course, we had to watch some of her videos. And I watched the interview that she did with Tom Bilyeu. It's like a 56-minute interview. And I think when she talks about this exercise, is around the 40-minute mark. So she talks about exposing the lies. And so what I've been doing is I've been writing down, so you write down in pencil all the lies that you can think of in 5 areas. And so the 5 areas are money, who I am, relationships, health and fitness, and spirituality. So you write that in pencil, and then what you need to do is you need to underneath write in red pen the truth. The truth, even if you don't believe it yet. Right? So I'm trying to think of one. Let's see. Wow, I can't think of one offhand. Oh, okay, let's take an example that she uses. So, money is hard to make. You have to work really hard to make money. So that for me means, really long hours and whatever, because, you're shaped by what you know. Whereas actually there are some people that when they're doing something that they really love and they're getting paid for it, that's not really working hard. Yes, there's working hard elements, but it's not slogging yourself, like killing yourself for, a corporate job.
Yeah.
If you have creativity in a different area and you can harness that and be paid well, speaking, for example, eventually you can make way more.
Sure.
But, it's very, when we have all these certain mindsets, it's quite hard to break out of them because we don't actually realize that we have that patterning.
Yeah.
And so just to finish off the exercise is that you write the truth, and then you have to say lie, truth. You have to go through all of that for a couple of days, which is the point that I'm, at today. And then what that's training your brain to do is your brain is seeing the lie, and then it's immediately being followed up with the truth. So she says that it's like it's part of NLP, where you're reframing, you're reteaching your brain to sort of see the truth, and then because you've written the lie in pencil, at the end of the 2 days, you rub out the lie. So you're left with the truth.
Oh, that's good.
I know. So I'll let you know what that feels like at the end. But it's fascinating, right?
It is. And, I always like, you see this a lot in kind of the, in the coaching world, and just the concept of the stories that we tell ourselves. The thing is we update everything in our lives so often, right? I mean, how often do you update your wardrobe, update your car, your house, your job? Like nobody has the same job or the same wardrobe or anything for 50 years. At some point, some more than others. If you're like my husband, you're still wearing, jeans from the 80s.
Hey, my car is 25 years old, so I don't buy new stuff until it's broken because I have sentimental value as well.
I get it. I've got some stuff too. But for the most part, we, and even like, look at our mobiles, we constantly, we have to update our apps and our phones and everything. But how often do we stop and update our beliefs and the stories that we tell ourselves? Brene Brown, she's a big advocate.
I love her.
I know, she is amazing. And, I was listening to a podcast with her the other day, and she was talking about the stories that we tell ourselves. And it, kind of goes back to what you were just saying with the truth and the lie. And it's like the lies that you put down, these are the stories that you have been telling yourself for so long and have probably never thought, maybe I should check in and see if this is something that I still believe or not, or that's even true or not. And she has this thing that I love, like she calls them conspiracies and confabulations.
Okay, tell me about that.
And she, the conspiracies are the lies that we tell ourselves. So, for example, say I text you and you don't get back to me. And in my mind, I think, oh, this conversation went just off the rails. She's really angry with me. She doesn't want to be my friend anymore, blah, 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 blah. And then you just, go into this crazy mode of this story that you just make up.
Very convincing story.
Absolutely nothing, It could be that you fell asleep and you're taking a nap.
Yeah.
It could be anything. But we so quickly come up with these conspiracies. And, Brene talks about how, kind of the neuroscience behind that is because our brain, when something happens that's negative, our brain quickly looks for a reason to justify it if we don't quite understand. And unfortunately, a lot of times for those of us who are kind of maybe not always the most positive, that's where our mind goes.
Well, I mean, I think I saw a TED Talk where it says that our brains are wired to look for the negative.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's easier. It's like going from A to B. It just goes really, really fast.
Oh yeah.
Rather
I mean,
than
this is like split second.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And isn't it crazy how fast you can make that story up? It's like, I can't remember what I did this morning, yet my brain has the capacity to make up this crazy story.
And then what happens is that when you've made up that story, so what you've done is, this is a hypothetical situation, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm loving having Whitney on the sofa. I'm not going to blank her tomorrow. But what then, because the story doesn't make you feel good, then what that following on from it would mean is that when I do text you in like later that day or 2 days or maybe a few days, I'm going to have potentially no idea that this is what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And you could get a text from me, you can be like, oh, she's lying, or oh my goodness, like I don't like her, or she deliberately hurt me.
Yeah.
You know? And then you'll change your behavior to me.
Yeah.
Based on the story that's in your head.
Exactly.
Which I have no idea about.
Yeah. And how many times do we have those fake conversations in our heads
so many times.
with people that and then we get really upset or something, and then sometimes you step back and you're like, where did that even come from? That's
especially when
I've
you
just
get
had this whole conversation with this person in my head that isn't even remotely.
But when you get the
similar.
opportunity to actually have it, have you? Because I use Brene Brown's exact language a lot of times with my best friend, because we practice. We practice this. We kind of like try and be as involved as possible with each other to just, practice and check in with each other. And so, just a couple of months ago, I remember I texting, and WhatsApping actually. And so, I sent her, some messages, whatever, and I kind of felt like she hadn't responded. And I knew she loves me. Like, it's not a case of that. I wasn't doubting that. What I was actually doubting, I was thinking, well, is it because I'm talking about this particular thing, and is she just bored, and is she does not want to, talk about it, and she doesn't know how to say it to me. And when you have those feelings, it's hugely uncomfortable, because then what you have to do, if you want to check in with your story, is you need to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Or potentially difficult conversation, uncomfortable conversation, where you're opening up your heart and you're being vulnerable. And Brene Brown talks about vulnerability a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I said to her, hey, I'm just wondering, do you not like it when I talk about this? Are you kind of getting bored? Like, because if so, I don't really know how to stop, but I just need to know. And she said to me, oh my God, no, like, we can talk about this as long as you need to. I was just really busy, with, my child, or I was going here or there. Like, it's completely not, like, I'm completely not feeling that way. And, the relief that I felt from then I felt brave, because, I did something that was hard. But then it was relief, because I thought, oh, this story, I can now let this story go, because I've had it verified by the actual person that I've made up the story about.
Yeah. And something that I have found is that it is almost never personal. 99.9% of the time, it is not personal at all.
I've heard that too. It's so hard to really I find that so hard to take on board.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit with my story.
Exactly. And, going back to Brene Brown, the conspiracies and confabulations.
Yes, what's the confabulation?
That's when we have that story and that we're so convinced that it's true. So, if I would ask you about, the conversation you just had, or what you thought was going on, you would tell me, oh, I'm in conflict.
Yeah.
Right now, because
I've got a real problem. My best friend and I are not really speaking because she doesn't want to hear what I have to. Yeah.
And it's like that story. Then it comes out as this. It's not true at all, but it's so real to you that you believe it. And so this is you start to tell people like it's real.
Yeah.
And that is so, I've done that before.
Of course.
It is so,
I think we all do
so
it
crazy.
to, in whatever extent, and we don't even realize we're doing it. That's the crazy thing.
And
we
it's
don't
like
realize
we look
that we're
for
doing it.
justification or, just empathy from others. And it's funny because really, like you said, we should just be having the conversation with the person. But sometimes it's easier to do these confabulations and to share those confabulations with others to get empathy instead of actually going to the source and just finding out that, nope, she fell asleep, or she was on the tube and she didn't have access, mobile access, or she got busy with her kid. It's never personal, or rarely, really ever personal.
Have you read that book, the Four Agreements?
No.
Okay, I haven't read it either, but I think this might be one of the, or unless maybe I'm thinking of something completely different. That being impeccable. Well, actually, one of the Four Agreements is be impeccable with your word. And if we sort of go back to where we started about the power of language, well, who do we need to be the most impeccable with our word to? It's ourselves.
Yeah.
It's ourselves. It does come full circle because, and if we just briefly, to close up, just examine why is language, why is the way that we talk to ourselves, why is that so important, do you think?
Because I think it drives our emotional and psychological health.
Yeah. I agree.
And our behavior.
Yeah. See, I think if it was
everything.
if it was just the internal, then you could probably say, okay, well, I just choose to not operate on that level. But because it then impacts our behavior too, and our ability and our mindset.
And that goes into our happiness, our relationships, our ability to cope with adversity.
Yeah.
It, everything is encompassed in how we talk to ourselves in that language. It impacts everything.
Yeah. This has been such a joy to have you on the red sofa.
I know. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And
I feel like we could talk for another 5 hours.
I know, and I've just realized, I don't know whether you guys can hear it, but I think they're mowing the lawn outside. So I'm thinking that this might actually be
time for a tea break.
A really good time to close this out and say, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this. And please let us have comments. Let us know what you think about what we've talked about, and also if there are any topics that you would like to be covered in future episodes of the Red Sofa Conversations. And so with that, I'm reaching for my handy remote. I am gonna sign off. Bye from me.
Bye.
Bye, guys.